And joining me now from London is Ian Black, who is a senior fellow at the LSE Middle East Center. And from Amman, Daoud Kuttab, who is a Palestinian journalist and Director General of the Community Media Network. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So, Ian, has this agreement come as a surprise?
It was a surprise in the sense that there was no prior information about it. It was announced last Thursday, I think. But of course, the geopolitical context of increasingly close relations between Israel and the UAE has been apparent for many years now. I think it began in around 2006. And it's been going on for a long time, and it reflects a wider regional trend of increasingly close and indeed visible links between Israel and the Gulf states. But the UAE has been the outlier in that sense. It's been most visible and highly developed.
So, Daoud, what's your take on Turkey's reaction? Why it considers this agreement null and void?
Well, I think it's null and void because it violates the Arab Peace Plan. The Arab Peace Plan, which, by the way, was initiated by UAE's best friend, the Saudis, says clearly that normalization should follow the Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territories. It's also null and void because it basically gives away something for free to a very corrupt and anti-Palestinian leader of Israel for free. There's really nothing that they got out of it. They didn't really stop the annexation, and if anything, it was already stopped or slowed down by countries like Jordan, by Germany, by other countries. And so they really gave away something for free.
Yes, but I mean, what kind of a role the United Arab Emirates played in regards to the Palestinians? Are they in a position to decide on Palestinian lands, Palestinian people's future? What's your take on that?
Yes, I think what my take is that the Palestinians have very strong power of negation, but they don't have any power of getting what they want. They can stop any peace deal that doesn't meet their minimum standards, but there's really nothing they can do about forcing the Israelis to end the occupation. So it's a shame because, I mean, the Arab Emirates has generally been supporting Palestinians, but they really have no military relationship or conflict with Israel. And I think it weakens the ability of a non-violent resolution to the conflict because Mahmoud Abbas has based his entire strategy on diplomacy and on the Arab world supporting him.
Yeah.
So this weakens the point of view.
Yeah. So Ian, in your opinion, what's the main aim of this agreement? I mean, to keep the US military engaged in the region, isolate Turkey, punish Qatar, and avert the Iranian threat?
Well, I think that both countries, both the parties want to please Washington, whether or not President Donald Trump is re-elected this November. They both see the US as a key strategic ally in the Middle East, and particularly with regard to Iran's regional ambitions, and indeed the common view of the Iranian threat. I think that it serves Netanyahu's interests because although he had pledged repeatedly to go ahead with Israel's unilateral annexation of parts of the West Bank, he realized that the international opposition to that would be very damaging. So in a sense, the offer by the Emiratis of this deal got him off the hook in a way that was a win-win situation for him. He could present it as Israel increasingly accepted by the Arab world and avoid something which would be damaging to Israel's reputation. But of course, at the same time, he's promised that annexation is not off the agenda, and it has
Yes.
maybe been postponed.
Yes. So, I mean, can this agreement prod Israel to accept a Palestinian state, maybe, Dawood? Are you optimistic about that?
I think I am optimistic, but for a totally different reason. I think this is weakening a lot Mahmoud Abbas's strategy, and it's pushing Palestinians more and more to unity and to really rethinking their whole strategy of whether they want a two-state solution, one-state solution. And I think it's going to near, hopefully, the new elections and maybe the incoming of new leadership to the Palestinians. And that's what gives me optimism.
Mm-hmm. So, and are there any similar agreements in the works with other Arab or Gulf states? Who is more likely to follow suit, Ian?
Well, the countries that are mentioned are usually Bahrain and Oman. The Bahrainis have been pretty close to the Emiratis in terms of their open dealings in the direction of normalization with Israel. Netanyahu visited Oman accompanied by the head of the Mossad intelligence service at the end of 2018. So that's a possibility. The Saudis have made clear, and the Saudis really matter, of course, because they're the largest of the Arab Gulf states, and they enjoy a particularly prominent position in the region. The Saudis have made clear that they remain committed to the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002, and of course the Emirati departure from that sets a dangerous precedent in terms of Arab unity, in terms of the recognition of Israel by any Arab state, regardless of whether that helps resolve the Palestinian issue. I think Israel, in the big picture, Israel can normalize relations with all Arab states, hypothetically, potentially, but the Palestinians, of course, are not going to go away until the occupation is ended.
So, Daoud, do you think this agreement succeed to garner popular support among Arab countries and Gulf countries?
I don't, actually. I don't agree that any other country will follow suit for the following reasons. One, the Emirates got something very bad used product from the Israelis. I doubt that the Israelis are going to give anything to Bahrain or Oman or even Sudan. Secondly, Oman and Bahrain are much closer to the Saudi Arabia than they are to the Emirates. And thirdly, we saw how basically the Emirates have been really badly hurt. Their image has been tarnished. You see pictures now of Al-Aqsa. People burnt the pictures of the leader and they stepped on him and they called him a traitor. I don't think the Arabs gain much from these agreements, and they lose much more than what they gain.
Do you believe that the international community cares about its tarnished image, because the European Union basically just welcomed this agreement, but also said they'll be, of course, pursuing their commitment for a two-state solution? How viable is this?
Well, the Bahrainis said that they will, make a decision by the end of the year. And this, to me, tells me that they're waiting to see what happens in the elections in America. If Trump is not elected, then the pressure is not going to be on them as much as if he is elected. If he's elected, they will be under tremendous pressure to do that. So I think a lot depends on what happens in November in the U.S.
So, Ian, some analysts argue that with this agreement, Israel has become part of a solution, not part of a problem. Or do you agree that it succeeded in breaking the Arab wall for the Palestinian cause without firing a bullet?
Well, I think there is a danger of that. I agree with Daoud that it's not automatically taken for granted that others will follow, but it is an important moment, nevertheless, in breaking the long-standing Arab consensus about normalization with Israel without a solution to the Palestinian issue, which the Palestinians themselves, of course, have to accept. I agree with Daoud that one of the effects is likely to be a rethinking of the Palestinian strategy. Absolutely. I mean, long before this agreement long before the agreement between Israel and the UAE,
Yes.
the Palestinians had been effectively marginalized. So they do need to rethink their overall strategy. And young people are increasingly doing that. But I do not believe myself that the increasingly fashionable idea of a one-state solution in which both peoples have equal rights is in any way achievable. Nobody has a workable strategy to achieve that goal.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk.